office hour. Welcome to our office hours for the Homes for LA NOFA opportunity. I hope all of you can hear me right now. I wanted to start with a few pieces of background. I think as most of you already know, we are hosting office hours every Tuesday and Thursday. We offer these opportunities so that members of the public and applicants to this NOFA have an opportunity to speak to LAHD staff, convey your concerns and questions in a less impersonal format than some of the other forums that we have available for collecting your questions and feedback. But I do want to caveat that what I say here is not final. We're trying to provide you with a little bit more service and provide real live responses when possible, and also really give you a little bit more insight into LAHT's thinking. But the final responses will come via those PDF Q&A sets that we publish usually once a week and can be found on the Homes for LA NOFA website. With that, I think it would be nice if we can do a quick round of introductions, hear from all of you which organizations you represent, and if you want to say a sentence or two about the program that you're applying for, programs some of the time, and the projects that you have. Do we have any volunteers?
Hello, Edwin. My name is Merdad Ayati. We're an architect firm representing the client, and this project will be a new construction for profit, and it's a 21 mixed use, actually 20 apartment buildings, and then units and one retail space.
Okay. I might have some questions for you soon too.
Hi, I'm with Venice Community Housing, and we have a couple different sites, a scattered site refinance that's going to go into one or more of the preservation pools, and then a new construction that will probably get submitted to the alt models new construction, and maybe another scenario.
Exciting.
Yes. Oh, and a third one too. Yeah, another one. So we have 3 different projects.
3 different projects that you're applying to the NOFA for. Wow. Yes. I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, Muthia or June. Oh, June, you went off mute.
Hey, Edwin, June Park, helping SRO Housing Corporation with a couple applications for operating assistance.
Great. So we're doing intros right now, Erin. Oh, you went off mute, Muthia?
Sorry, I joined a bit late, but yes, I'm Muthia. I'm with Related. And we have a project in downtown LA that's a senior project that we're going into the pooled multifamily. But we might have it apply for other things if we're allowed to. That's a question I want to ask on this call.
So it's a new construction project for the pooled sources multifamily?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, we can get to the questions about multiple applications as well. Carrie or Erin, do you want to say a few words about the organization that you're representing and the project that you're applying for?
I'll go ahead real quickly. I'm just here supporting Muthia as well. So I'm also here from Related, working on the same project as her.
Thank you.
Hi, Aaron Mensch here, R2H Development, just contemplating a new construction project. And seeing if it's a fit, and asking a few questions potentially.
Okay. Who wants to start with a question?
Edwin, I have a couple of quick questions. One is that this project is already been RTI and permitted, and it's shovel ready. We just haven't started it. And for the appraisal, does it have to be as is, or has to be as is and as built?
So I think our guidance thus far might have been a little bit confusing. So we prefer the as is appraisal because that is the appraisal does a few things. One of which is to establish an acquisition price, and the as is appraisal tells us what the current price is for the improvements as they are now, really what the seller is selling to you now. So we prefer the as is appraisal. That being said, we will accept the as-built appraisals as well in limited case-by-case basis. If you have a strong argument for why your seller needs to negotiate a different price based on the as-is instead of the as-built, but we are going to be very strongly discouraging the as-builts as a tool that really will inflate the acquisition price.
Just a quick feedback. Actually, as is works better for us because this property was already acquired back in 2015. And it's so in this case, I think as is would be the much better situation for us. Correct?
That works for us both.
Okay. Can I ask you quickly my second question?
Sure.
I understand that there is a requirement to apply for LIHTC, or at least have a consideration for whether it's a 4% or 9%. My question is that application should be concurrent, or should we have it as a consideration in our pro forma and our descriptions? And then once we get a response, if it's positive, then apply for the funding.
So not all programs within this NOFA have the requirement for the LIHTC funding. So I'll call them LIHTC or tax credits, but the pooled sources multifamily program requires LIHTC. The ACK Rehab, the ULA ACK Rehab Preserving Affordability program requires LIHTC, and the ULA multifamily program requires LIHTC. So we do not expect applicants to be applying for to have a LIHTC or tax credit application in process, being submitted, already submitted, I should say. You don't need an already submitted tax credit application to be applying for our funding. In fact, our timeline for our funding expects to make awards in the winter of 2026 so that the awarded projects can very quickly turn around and submit tax credit applications in the TCAC funding round in the winter.
Very good. So my understanding then is it is implied that we will be applying if we get accepted, but we don't have to reflect any of that information in the original application that we are submitting on the 20th.
It is not implied, it is explicit in the regulations that we expect you to take our funding and then go apply for the tax credits subsequent to a funding award from us.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
I have a question. With respect to the entitlement readiness, I have a project that does have a letter of compliance, which is an entitlement for a project that is of higher unit count than we intend on doing, since we're going to change the project a bit for large family TCAC. The letter of compliance does give us the latitude to reduce the amount of units, but I just want to make sure that's okay, because the letter of compliance will state a unit count that is higher than the newly contemplated project. It's the build, it's going to be in substantial conformance, and the building is going to be exactly the same. We're just lowering the unit count. So is that okay? And maybe we should just put a cover letter stating this when we send in the letter of compliance, or how do you suggest we deal with this?
I'm not an expert on the planning processes. My understanding was that those entitlements are up tos and that you can go below. I think it's always helpful to be very explicit and submit documentation explaining when something does not match exactly with a document that you're showing us. But my understanding was that entitlements are up to amounts and you don't have to always build up to that.
Yeah, we will be doing less, and there is one of the conditions in there that allows that, but I don't want somebody to see that it's higher and automatically just, disqualify it or something. So maybe we should just put a cover page explaining it, you'd recommend?
I think that'd be helpful, but I think this is a situation that our staff have dealt with. What you're describing is a very common situation. I imagine our staff will not be too surprised by it, but again, it is always helpful um, to provide a little bit of narrative explaining any discrepancies.
Okay, thank you.
Was that your only question, Aaron?
I have a few others, but maybe we'll give other people a shot first.
Sure. Anybody else? Vanessa?
Yeah, so we had some CAS related questions and I did submit them to the Q&A. So maybe there's a written response coming, but on their scattered site refinance, so we have several properties that we already own and we'll be submitting them in groupings. And one of the questions was whether if it's infeasible to accommodate the mobility units on a ground floor of one of the existing buildings, can those mobility units be met in the other properties, or do they have to be in each building?
So for a scattered site project where you can only make the mobility enhancements feasible on a subset of the sites, do we
Yeah.
need that evenly spread across? That is a really good question I have never encountered before. I think we're going to have to check with our ACHP team and get back to you.
Okay. And then there was, our cast raised the question about the requirements of the mobility percentage. I think it's, or the ADA units as shown in the NOFA is 4 and 10%. Sensory and then mobility. But on the VCA, I think it goes up to 11%. And so she was questioning the percentage that's actually required. Is this another one that ACHP is going to need to respond to?
I was told that it would be 4 and 10 as we state in the NOFA. We'll check what the VCA is requiring and publish that into our Q&A.
Okay. So you guys are still responding. So I saw on the schedule that there was only Q&A through last week. But you guys are still responding to questions.
We are still responding.
Okay.
Our plan is to continue responding until a few business days before the end of the before the 20th, at which point any new guidance that we give you would not be very helpful as you are scrambling to complete computations.
Well, thank you for the continued responses.
Yeah, so thank you for those questions. We'll have to get back to you. Those are very technical.
Hey, Edwin, I've got some questions regarding the operating assistance program. Really basic one. Document 1, the Excel pro forma. Wanted to confirm that all the tabs labeled A are not relevant for the operating assistant and that we should start with tabs B.
That's right. So if you're doing
Okay.
a pure operating assistance project, then you begin with all the tabs with the prefix B. That being said, I expect that we will get many co-applications, and this gets to, I think it was maybe Muthia's questions. So for people who are cross-applying to a preservation capital improvement program plus the operating assistance, those applicants are invited to start their application in the UNOFA portal using the preservation program, because the preservation programs, all the capital programs have a lot more requirements and have a lot more questions. So anybody doing both a capital program plus the operating starts with that preservation program, and then you'll be given the chance to select an option to tack on just a few additional questions relating to the operating assistance. You'll answer those, and then for those people, you'll submit a pro forma that fills out all the prefix A tabs and then all the prefix B tabs. And then if you're like June, in your case, just operating assistance, you just fill out those B tabs.
Wonderful, thank you. Part of document 1, there's a threshold requirement, Edwin, that says to provide a variance analysis as part of the pro forma showing causes of operating gap. I didn't find a template in any of the tabs. What are you guys expecting for that?
Our verbiage has evolved a little bit as we went through this. Those B tabs are the variance analysis.
Gotcha. Okay.
They contain all the things that they ask you to show: your current cash flow, your current liabilities, your current costs, and it'll paint the picture for us that to see what's causing those gaps.
Great, wonderful. Site control, will you guys accept anything else than a title report? We're looking at like 10 applications. Could we submit, I don't know, grant deeds, property tax, bills?
I don't know that we've
Anything
made any
else?
consideration for any documents other than a preliminary title report. So it sounds like your issue is you don't think that, given the volume of applications and the volume of preliminary title reports that you will be requesting, that you'll be able to turn those around within the next 18 days. Is that the issue?
That's right. That's right. That is a concern. And these are properties that SRO has owned for like 20, 30 years. So we're gonna have to open new orders with the title companies. So if there's any other document that we can provide instead.
Can you email our regular intake email, the lahg.h for LA at lacity.org, and
Sure.
then provide your recommendation for what you think the alternatives should be? And we will take that under advisement.
We'll do that. Wonderful. And distance, the NOFA says that up to 100,000 can be considered a grant, and anything above that will be a loan with a 3% interest. So can we model it in the pro forma as 100,000 being a grant, no interest, and anything above it show 3% interest?
No, anything, if you exceed 100K, the entire thing needs to be modeled as a loan with the 3% residual receipts.
Got it. Okay. So if it's anything above 100,000, then no portion of it will be a grant.
No.
Understood. Okay. I think I have one more question.
Yeah.
A couple properties need elevator modernization work. It's not major replacement. We're looking at a budget of $100,000. Can that be included as an emergency capital needs?
Yes, that is exactly what we mean by the emergency repairs and capital needs. We don't want to pay for major replacements, so I think that's
Okay.
the important part that you should emphasize, both for the NOFA and for anyone else who asks. So the emphasis is on that 250K cannot be used to replace big chunks of your HVAC system. It can be used to bring it back up to operation. It can be used to improve the operation, but the lines get fuzzy. The lines get fuzzy,
Right.
but that is you hit the nail on the head. It is we cannot be replacing major systems with it, but you can make repairs.
Great. And just confirming, it says the limit is 4,000 per unit in operating reserves or operating assistance plus up to 250,000. So we're not capped at 250, right?
You're not
Total
capped at
requests.
250. The cap for 250 is only for the repairs. So
Yep.
we just have to be very careful because of a number of labor requirements in
Mm-hmm.
the measure that even though we're trying to allow for a little bit of capital needs while keeping the emphasis on this being an operating subsidy program and an operating assistance program, but knowing that that in reality, people who have high operating needs almost always need a little bit of money for repairs.
Great. I think there was, and this is my last question, a threshold requirement about a milestones letter. Forget which one.
Yeah, I think it's a milestones commitment letter.
Yeah. Do you guys have a template for that? What you want to see or?
No, it does not. We don't have a template, but we ask you to give us the relevant information that you as a project manager would want to highlight in any milestone. You should certainly be telling us well you're an operating, so
Mhm.
tell us when the repairs will begin. I think that document had more been envisioned for the capital projects. So, we really need to know when all the other leverage sources are going to be applied for, when you expect to receive those decisions, when you get through the entitlements, building permits, all those things. On operating assistance, it's a little bit simpler, but please let us know when you can expect to begin the repairs, when they will be completed. If you are having, um, if you're representing to us in your application that you are facing really big vacancy loss from having units offline due to repair issues, give us your timeline for when those vacancy losses will be resolved. So it's really your opportunity to highlight for us the issues that you're raising in your project's management and letting us know when we can expect to see those things improve.
Makes sense. Thank you, Edmund. I'm done.
Okay, who's next?
Hi, so further clarification on applying for multiple sources, and specifically both the pool sources and the ULA multifamily affordable housing. Is there a restriction on applying to both for those, or are we free to move forward?
Sorry, I'm not sure if I understood the question.
So we're initially applying for the pooled sources multifamily fund, but we're also considering on the same project applying for the ULA multifamily affordable
Right.
housing. We just want to know if there's an issue with applying to both or
We do allow so it's a little bit confusing, but we allow the same site and the same sponsor to apply using that same site to multiple applications. But a ULA multifamily project may not look the same as a project that you are applying that is really optimized for the pooled sources multifamily program, for example. I don't know that. Maybe you're submitting the same project, almost the same for both, but because the two programs have many key points that are not the same, including one is very so the example is pooled sources multifamily has Buy America, Build America requirements. So that program could have very expensive materials and construction material costs. The ULA multifamily program does not require the BABA, but does require PLA. So that will have very expensive labor. So we want to be clear that when whatever project that you submit has to meet all the requirements of that specific program, And if you submit the same project to both, we just need to see that they meet both of the requirements. So that means that we need to see you submit a whole new application for both of those. And then back to my point earlier about if you change up the projects a little bit to better align with that funding source, you are welcome to submit slightly different projects on the same site, slightly different project proposals on the same site, but always through two separate applications.
Got it. Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, that does.
Okay. Any other ones from you?
So going back to Jun's question about the milestone commitment letter. So if we have like just a timeline of the dates, and then like on a letter, have it signed, will that suffice? Is that what you're envisioning?
A letter to be signed?
Yeah, like a milestone for the milestone commit letter, like with all the dates that is needed.
Yes, and the dates. So you're talking about a capital project. So that's a lot more of the dates that we were talking about. Things like the other funding sources. When will you apply to those other funding sources? When you expect to receive decisions on those? If you have any entitlements that still need to be approved. When you expect you're ready to issue for your building permits, start of construction, major construction milestones as well, and then your perm conversion timeline, and then your lease up. So all the things that we normally look for in looking at a project's development life cycle, those
Okay.
should all be in the milestones commitment letter.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from others?
Yes, I have a few questions. One, we're wondering if there's going to be any resolutions needed for each of the funding programs we're applying to.
Board resolutions?
Mm-hmm.
I believe we require board resolutions on all of our funding sources.
Okay.
Sorry, let me take a yeah, I believe it is in the sponsor portfolio underwriting. You are required to submit a packet of sponsor guarantees, and one of them is a board resolution. Or if you do not have a board, an evidence of consent from majority partnership interest.
Okay, got it.
There is some additional clarification definition in the regs. It's under document 4 under threshold. There's an additional paragraph explaining more details about what's needed in the budget resolution, how recent it has to be, and certain authorizations that have to be present within the resolution. Document 4 in the threshold section of the regs.
Okay, perfect. I'll refer to that section.
Yep.
And then I do have another question. We are wondering under document 7 for the PLA, it's asking for a list of entities and names of partners. Who are you kind of looking to be included on this list?
Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, okay. So for the project labor agreement section, it's labeled as document 27. It's asking for a list of entities and names of partners.
Uh, I think we might have some wires crossed. There is a document 27. It's not related to the project labor agreement. It's a form that this is a form that you access from the UNOFA application. It's one of the download forms, and it's sort of a mini org chart showing the ownership and the voting interest and the ownership stake of any entities, like special purpose entities that you're proposing to create to manage this project. It's not related to the project labor agreements.
My apologies. I actually do know what you're talking about. I did see that earlier. So that was an outdated question and I should not have asked that. So super apologies there.
No
I
worries.
am aware what you're talking about. And then I just have one more question. For document 33, it's asking for evidence of priority populations served. Is this a letter as well? It doesn't look like there's a form provided here.
There's no form provided here, so the I think we should take a moment to talk through what we mean when we say the priority populations. So several of the programs, maybe all of the programs, require have scoring priority for priority populations. So we name things like special needs populations, family units, so 3 bedrooms or more, and also seniors. So the way that we are scoring for the priority populations is if you are providing 10 percentage points or more of your units as serving that population beyond what our funding sources require. So I think that's how the scoring criterion is described in our regs. I think it's a little bit confusing, so let's just take an example. So in the ULA multifamily program, there is no requirement to serve any of those populations that I named, right? The ULA multifamily program has some of the fewest bells and whistles besides the PLA requirement, but it does not point to any priority populations. So it's 0 on 3-bedroom unit requirement. It does not. It's 0 for special needs. It's 0 for seniors. So you don't need to serve any of those populations. So if you serve any of those populations with at least 10 percentage points or more of your units, you will get full points there. I just want to quickly give another example just to reinforce everybody's understanding. In the ULA alternative models programs, there are 2 ULA alternative models programs. Both of those have a 20% requirement that you serve special needs, deeply affordable populations at 15 and 30% AMI. So if you are proposing to if you are attempting to get priority points by serving a priority population in excess of 10 percentage points or more of what that program requires 20% ALI, ELI. So if you wanted to get priority points by serving more ALI, ELI, you would need to go to 30% of your units serving ALI through ELI to get that bucket of those points. And then if you did not want to go the ALI, ELI route, and you wanted to serve 10% of your population, 10% of your units as seniors, you would get the points by serving by setting aside 10% of your units for seniors. So that's what we're looking for you to describe in your evidence of priority population served. Just point out what the requirement is and how you went 10 percentage points above that.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question. I know it's a very abstract and legalistic definition that we provided. Hopefully the examples help.
Yes, very helpful. Thank you.
Any
Those are
others
my
from you, Carrie?
questions. Nope, that was it.
Okay. Anybody else wants to ask any questions?
Yes, this is Kaifa Tule. I just sent you a message. Can you read it, or should I go ahead and read it?
I don't know if I saw any. Oh, I did receive a message. Is the ESA phase 1 required for rehabilitation projects? Yes.
Okay.
2, for preservation applications, there is no score attached to cost effectiveness under application scoring. However, there are points for cost effectiveness for new construction. Are any points attributed to cost effectiveness for preservation and rehabilitation projects? That is a very good question. You are right. We do look at your costs. We do look at cost effectiveness. While we will not be scoring for it independently in this in any of the preservation programs, I just want to share a little bit more reasoning why we did that. I think it just helps that you don't feel that you're dealing with a black box here.
Right.
Part of the reason why we have slightly de-emphasized, and I'm just saying we're slightly de-emphasizing, there are other scoring categories where your costs will come in, including the feasibility score. But we felt that it was appropriate to de-emphasize the costs for the preservation projects because we expect our accessibility requirements to be very expensive to comply with. And we wanted to give our applicants, especially in this first year with these programs being completely new, a little bit more breathing room to budget for those expensive accessibility improvements, and not make cost effectiveness one of the top scoring criteria just for the preservation projects. So that's why we made that distinction between the two types of programs.
Thank you. That is very good. Because I read the document over and over. I couldn't find that was an issue that you indicated. But anyway, it's good to know. Thank you.
Yep. Yasmin, I think you went off mute.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to ask a somewhat related question about how the NAC's review of like your accessibility design is going to reconcile with like your project architect's accessibility design. Because I think that, we're going to be submitting like our accessibility plan to the city, and then we're expecting the NAC to tell us that it's going to be something different and that, it might cost more, et cetera. So I guess when and how does that get reconciled?
That is another very good question that I don't know that I can give you a clear answer. And I think you all might notice that it's very hard for us as LHD staff to answer questions about our accessibility requirements because we are not in full control of those, right? As you point out, the neutral accessibility consultant, the NAC, is actually the final decision maker. And I can tell you that over the past several years, we have made very significant strides in aligning within our ACHP team and our ACHP inspectors, getting much more on the same page as the NAC on how certain definitions would be interpreted and how certain standards would be implemented. However, we do not control those things. We have the ACHP program to try our best to implement our understanding of what the standard is, but we can be and sometimes are still overruled by the NAC.
Fair enough. Will something come out in Q&A that maybe addresses the question?
Do you have a more specific example of
not right now,
standard or?
but no, not right now. I mean, I could submit a written question that's, again, it's going to be kind of generic because I don't, we're not far enough along in the design for me to be able to say, oh, this is something that we might have a question about, and that, the NAC might say, do something different,
Right. I think your question is kind of a comment and a process suggestion that we be as aligned as possible with the NAC as we score and as we publish guidance. So we are doing our very best to stay on the same page as the NAC, get ahead of any possible issues and resolve any differences in interpretation before projects get into our award pipeline. But unfortunately, it does sometimes happen that there is a disagreement and we are overruled, but we are working to make that process
Okay.
and our guidance as clear as possible.
I have a much simpler question, easier question,
Okay.
which is, the NOFA says that transitional housing is going to be, can be funded by uh, this pot of funds. So I wasn't sure if like a separate NOFA would come out for that, or if uh, it doesn't seem like any of these particular programs that are under this NOFA would be a good fit for a transitional housing project. But I'm just curious, like what the plan is for that.
So none of the Homes for LA NOFA projects, none of the Homes for LA NOFA programs can fund transitional housing. None of the Homes for LA programs can fund any sort of interim housing or housing for people who are currently experiencing homelessness. The only exception to that, and it's not really exception, it's if you're doing a PSH project and you are moving people out of homelessness, and so the people who live there are now formerly homeless, those are the projects that this NOFA funds. I think you probably all follow Los Angeles city budget and city politics closely, but we are very strained for funding to support the interim housing services and interim housing slots. I would suggest that you tune into any of the housing and homelessness H&H committee meetings where this is discussed, probably every other meeting of that committee. But right now, I don't have clear information to put out about any subsidies that we will make available for transitional housing. Those budgets are very strained.
Thank you.
I had one if I may.
Sure.
The decent amount of points attributed to the stress testing, are there any in fees, I think that's in feasibility. Are there any specific parameters that are given so we know, it can stress test internally with is it interest rate, OPEX, or how do we know what the stress test is going to look like?
We are working on publishing a memo or an addendum to the NOFA regs that will elaborate on what we mean by the feasibility score that you were talking about. So the stress testing is an element of the feasibility score, and the feasibility score is present in both the preservation programs and for the new construction programs. So I think it was you, Kaifa, who asked earlier about the cost effectiveness scoring for the preservation. So the part of the way that we will still be able to look at your cost effectiveness is through the preservation scoring part of the preservation programs. So it's the feasibility, the feasibility scoring part of the preservation programs. But back to your question directly, Aaron, we have gotten a lot of feedback that you all as applicants want a lot more direction about how you will receive some partial points or full points under this criterion. And so both for the feasibility score and for the cost effectiveness score, the cost effectiveness score is only in the new construction programs. For both of those scoring elements, we are going to publish an addendum that will provide some more specifics about the criteria that we will use. However, I don't anticipate that we will provide a neat enough quantitative methodology that you will know your exact score going in. And part of that is because what we are trying to do with the feasibility score is to grade on a curve. It's really to rank all of the applicants relative to each other, all of the projects relative to each other, and have a sense of which projects and which applicants are strongest. And that is a relative question and not purely in absolute numbers. So we are trying our best to provide scoring methodology that will give you some more specifics about where you will land in that scoring, but our intention is to grade on a curve, and we will not know what that curve looks like until the application window has closed and we are looking at the applications. I know that's not a very satisfying answer, but
That makes sense. I guess last thing, with respect to the sponsor, is it okay if it's the nonprofit managing general partner in a partnership? Like, even if they only hold a small percentage, because usually they're there primarily for the purpose of a tax abatement, but sometimes they play a larger role. Does it matter what percentage they have in the overall partnership uh, to qualify as the sponsor? Does that make sense?
so I'm just going to use an example from the tax credit world where the nonprofit managing general partner, or MGP, would
Right.
typically only own 0.01% of the equity. And that's an industry standard. So LHG is not going to be surprised if you have a nonprofit MGP that is only holding a very tiny sliver of the overall ownership equity. What we do require is that MGP is in fact the managing general partner, that in your operating agreement or your partnership agreement that minimum certain number of management responsibilities are given to that MGP, and that the MGP has a voting right in all major decisions in that entity. So it needs to be a substantive, legally enshrined management role. It cannot just be for the purpose of having nonprofit participation so that you qualify for certain tax advantages. I will say that most of those tax advantages also have these same requirements, that the MGP has to play that management role, and there are enumerated responsibilities that MGP has to have in the legal documents.
So specifically, I just want to confirm that that MGP can be the sponsor of the deal, who, by which we're using their financial strength and REO and everything else. That's okay
For
for the purposes of this application and
I
proving.
guess my question is, who else would we be looking at if not for the managing general partner? Are you proposing that we
Yeah,
look at the limited partners financial
I
strength,
guess I guess what is it, the
the administrative
administrative
general
general
partner?
partner? Yeah. I mean,
We
we could do both. I just, like, for example, my entity, I'm going to be using the nonprofit MGP, and then my entity and maybe another one will be the other partners. But is it sufficient just to use the strength of the managing general partner?
we are looking in our feasibility scoring and our sponsor underwriting at all the members of the development team who you are proposing as sources of experience and as sources of financial guarantees. So um, it's not completely atypical for um, a development project to have multiple managing or general partners who play a role in the active management of the project. So certainly anybody who's playing a management role and has an ownership stake, I think, as a threshold question, anybody with a management role and ownership stake in the entity, we will be sponsor underwriting those people. But more broadly than that, if you have members of your development team who are not who are not actually the sponsors, but maybe you have a contractual relationship with a more experienced developer, and you're drawing on some of their development expertise in order to meet some of the experience and financial capacity requirements, we will also be underwriting them too.
Okay, so it sounds like it's okay, but maybe the more is better, just uh, to prove the strength.
Yes, I did not realize that you were not with the nonprofit when I first started answering your question. But we would want we would want duplicates of the audited financial statements for example. So we ask for audited financial statements. Unless the nonprofit is extremely strong and can show in any sponsor underwriting exercise that they alone have the experience and financial capacity to make this a very strong project, we would ask that you submit your own set of audited financial statements of your real estate owned schedule, anything else related to our ability to look at your strength as a sponsor. You should submit that too for any other entities that are in the ownership and management.
Okay, thank you.
Edwin, I have a question, another question about on the preservation base scoring. The base scoring, it said included 20 points for retrofit rehab work that provides certified accessible units, and then there was another 5 points for the EAP. But I don't know, the way I was reading the NOFA requirements, it looks like we're required to do, right, the percentages of sensory and mobility units. So I guess what are the points given for then?
Let me think about how to how to characterize some debates and evolving discussions that have happened around this. I think it's helpful to share that that one of the biggest goals in this in our preservation programs is the creation of those accessible units. I think it might have been you, Vanessa, who mentioned the VCA. So we have an obligation to create thousands of accessible units in the next several years, and will not be able to meet that requirement unless we aggressively promote the creation of those units or the retrofitting of units that will in the future comply with our ACHP requirements as part of that settlement agreement. So yes, as a bare minimum threshold for preservation projects, the requirement right now is you show us in your architectural plans that you will be able to, and you sign a certification showing that you will create those 4% sensory and 10%. I guess we'll check if it's 10% or 11%. But that roughly 10% of the units will meet the mobility requirements. So you're right, that is the threshold that you have to meet. There's the 5 points for the enhanced accessibility program. So this is the these are sort of, I have to choose my words wisely, but they're sort of like additional add-ons, kind of like they're not requirements, but you get extra points for agreeing to certain additional features. An example escapes me in this moment, but you're right that in the threshold, you have to provide that minimum number. And then in the scoring, one part of the accessibility scoring is that you do the EAP, so providing a little bit of additional bonus. Now, regarding the 20 points for the major retrofit and providing accessible units, this is specifically awarding projects that trigger the accessibility requirements by having major rehab. So let me explain what we mean by that. Not all of the preservation programs necessarily trigger capital improvements. Some of the accessibility programs, such as the ULA Acquisition and Rehabilitation Preserving Affordability Program, that program, in theory, is preserving units whose covenants are expiring, may not have really very serious capital needs. I mean, who knows? They likely will, but they don't have to have serious capital needs. And so in theory, a project could apply for the ULA Acquisition and Rehabilitation Preserving Affordability Program. Say we need this money to extend our covenants. We're not going to do any rehab. And then because there's no rehab, we're not going to trigger any ACHP requirements. Do you get where I'm going? So that big chunk of 20 points is to prioritize the projects that actually will trigger the ACHP requirements by having capital needs and actual rehab, even if those projects that don't need the rehab are cheaper than the projects that will require the rehab and the ACHP. Does
Got
that
it.
make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
It's a very long-winded answer to get through all the evolving thought processes, but yes, this is the ACHP requirements are a very important and difficult one for us to get through. Okay, I see the heads up that we're right up on the hour. I can maybe try to take one quick one if there are others. I saw you went off mute, Merdad.
Yeah, thank you for taking. In our case, because it's already entitled and we've permitted, we have 10% ELI units. In our rent schedule, if we want to do 100% AMI, since we already have an existing covenant, how do we handle it in the pro forma?
If you already have what?
We have 10% of the units ELI.
Uh-huh. But you
because
want
of the entitlements we did with
but
this
you want to
project.
change, but you want to change the AMIs, or
It would be to our benefit to have those units converted to 80%. Is that a possibility? And if it is, how do we reflect it in our pro forma?
I'm going to answer your second question first, which is that your pro formas your pro formas are projections of your cash flow and your costs. Well, they are in part a projection of your cash flows and your costs into the future. So your pro forma should go off the proposed project. We care about the existing use as well, but what we are underwriting to is the proposed project. So you should use the proposed rents, all the proposed features and parameters of the new project. That's what should go into the pro forma. Unless you're operating assistants, in which case we also ask for that variance analysis, so you do need to show your old stuff. To your first question about whether or not you can change a 30% AMI unit to an 80% AMI unit, my understanding is that there has been recent legislation that possibly allows for some amount of change in the covenants, but right now I do not know of a mechanism that would allow you to go around that kind of restriction to bring a 30% AMI unit to an 80% AMI unit. But we can look into that more, and there is legislation that is clarifying how we can make some changes to AMI levels.
Thank you.
We're working on that guidance too. I don't think that guidance will be ready at the time of the NOFA window closing though. Okay, I think we're over the hour already. I just want to say thank you all for your very thoughtful questions and helping us to clarify our thinking, help us to be clearer about what we have put out, and also helping us catch issues, typos, problems in our pro forma. So we appreciate you all giving a second look to these complex documents, and we look forward to answering any questions that we were not able to answer in today's session. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks,